Okay, fast forward a couple of days and the pump is back on the bench again. They did find a fault with it. I don't know exactly what the fault was, but it's been repaired and it's got a guarantee on that repair. So, time to get it back on the car and see what difference we've made. Hopefully we have made some difference. Start by putting that bracket back on. These are a T30. It's coming with a nice set of plugs in all the holes, so I don't have to worry about getting muck in there. I'll put some bits of rag in when I sent it to them, but obviously this looks much nicer like this. Let's get it fitted. This is one of those things where you just got to go steady. There's so many things it can catch on. It was just caught on a bit of wiring loom then. One of these lines in particular, the third one back, is particularly, too many particulars there. Anyway, third one back is quite tight compared to the others. What I mean by that is it doesn't seem to have much play in it. There we go, we're in. That was a 10mm. Now I've got the 11mm open spanner and also the line wrench for doing the final tightening. So I guess we just go one at a time. Probably makes sense to do the ones on the side first. And I'll probably do the one at the back on that side first of all. So let's whip the plug out. As you saw, I can do that most of the way hand tight. Keep these plugs for when I have to do another job involving breaking brake lines. Separating brake lines, let's say, shall we? I'm going to go around and tighten them all up finally when they're all in place. I just tighten that up enough so that brake fluid won't leak out. Okay, next one. There's always one. Now this one feels like, this one was the one that was under the most sort of, not tension, but the one that felt least like it wanted to move. As in there's not much slack in the line. I think this one goes down to the front left wheel, which is where I'm working, in case that isn't obvious, or left hand side anyway. So what I've done there is what I probably should have done at the start. It's not actually tightened anything up, to just give the unit a little bit of twist. In fact, I'm going to take that all the way out. I don't know whether you can tell, but basically the line, you probably can't because my hand's in the way, but I'm afraid there's nowhere else my hand can go. The line needs sort of encouraging quite a long way over with one hand. That's it, that's going in all right now. I always like to start these by hand because you really don't want to cross thread them. Feels like it's going in okay now. Right, now time to refer to my picture, because those last two lines look like either of them could go at the front, and there's quite a lot of play in both of them, so we can't use that as a way of helping us decide. Unfortunately, the pen that I used to mark the lines doesn't seem to be that compatible with brake fluid, so my markings aren't quite as clear as they were. Okay, so the one that bends first goes behind, and indeed they are in that orientation already, so that's good. So hoik that little plug out. Okay, now I think we can plug it back in. Put that cover back on like that. So I'll put a little bit of tape on, which I hope I won't regret now. I just put it over where the plug goes, just to stop any muck getting in there in the course of putting it in. Hopefully we can remove that in one go. We can. So this plug, it's got this sort of system here where that's fully open, and then you plug it in a little way and then you slide this down, and that kind of pulls the plug into the socket. Keeps everything where it should. Now it looks like that goes under there. Behind there. That's on. Now I think I'm going to get completely in your way here because I need one hand up there and one hand there. Still not quite on all the way. Still not quite on all the way. There we go. Don't know if you heard it click, but I did, and I felt it as well. So that's the pump pretty much fully installed. The last thing to do is to do a final tightening of all these lines. The torque setting, if you're interested, is 14 Newton meters, but there's absolutely no way with the torque wrench, even with the various crow's foot wrenches and stuff that I've got, that I'm going to get a torque wrench in there. So I'm going to do what I usually do, which is do them by feel. I've got absolutely no space with my line spanner there. But that's about right for that one. It's very hard to describe what I'm doing here when I'm tightening them up. But I'm not going crazy with the spanner. They are by no means as tight as I could do them with this spanner. Okay, I guess we're pretty much at the important bit now, and we are the interesting bit. We need to bleed the brakes, but before I bleed the brakes and before I put everything back, I really want to know if we've done anything with all the error codes. So let's put a little bit of this back to the point where we can actually get the battery on. I've got the battery tray in temporarily just with one bolt holding it in place, which is probably sturdy enough to, well, it is sturdy enough to start the car. One day I'll buy myself a proper set of pliers to do these clamps with, but until that day we'll keep going with the sliding grips pliers. There. Had the battery on charge just because it's been sitting for a while. Now that's pretty good news. I hope you can hear me okay. The brake fault has gone. The ESP and the steering are still there, but that always happens when you've disconnected the battery. You need to wait until you've driven the car before that clears. The engine light, I'm not so sure what's going on with that, but I'm happy enough with this that the brake warning, don't drive, don't touch the car, don't even breathe until you've taken it to an Audi dealership, that light has gone out, so I'm really happy with that. Okay, now we can get on with putting it back together properly. Put the battery back on charge for a bit because it's been out for a while. So I undid this plastic piece and I undid the wiring harness off it because I wanted to inspect it. This is those, well, in my view anyway, horrible Christmas tree type clips. Let's put that starter motor cable back in there while we're in the area. Why don't I like the Christmas tree clips? Because they are very hard to undo, and when you undo them, you invariably damage them. Makes it then hard to put things back how they were. However, that looks like it's gone back okay. Clip you in there, you in there. I'm going to put my little chafe resistance piece of rubber back in. I don't know whether you can see on camera, but it just the nature of the battery tray and the battery cover being so close to this harness, if I move it like that, you can probably see it has actually rubbed through the wrap on the harness. Hasn't rubbed through the wire underneath. But I put this on when I spotted it a little while ago, and I don't see any reason not to put it back on again, actually, because it should help protect it getting any worse, help stop it getting any worse, excuse me. Okay. Those are clipped back in. That's clipped back in there, that's in there, that is in there. These are 10mm. Then we have the lovely lump of plastic that is the airbox. Might be a good time to remove the engine cover. We're going to need it off to get to the brake fluid reservoir anyway on the master cylinder. That's more like it. So this bit goes on the outside. Sorry, this bit goes in first, and those two V-shaped widgets go on the outside. And then this slides into it. Like that. The last two fasteners in the parts tray, thankfully, which means I haven't forgotten anything, are the battery clamp and clamp bolt. It's 13mm, I think. Now the tray's in place, you can see how it's chafed that one, which is closer than that one to the battery tray. In fact, it's rubbing up against it, and it was rubbing up against it even before I'd wrapped it in that rubber sleeve there. Right, that's it back together. Okay, just limbering up for bleeding the brakes. You will no doubt spot that I've got my pressure bleeder connected up here. I felt the pedal actually beforehand and it felt pretty good, so I'm not even sure if I'm going to need to bleed the ABS pump, make a special effort to bleed that using VCDS. I will if I need to, but if I don't need to, I probably won't. I'm just quite interested to see how much air comes out doing a standard bleed as if you'd just replaced a caliper or something like that. So I'm interested to see how much air comes out that way. Also, I'll get through a lot less brake fluid doing it this way than using VCDS to bleed the pump. Although if I have to, obviously I will, because I want it to be right. But as I say, the pedal feels pretty good already, and I haven't done anything yet. So I've taken the standard cap off, disconnected the fluid level sensor, the plug's knocking about down there somewhere. The pressure bleeder's pumped up and it's got some fluid in it. And I'm going to do this now. The order of brake bleeding is always a controversial issue, isn't it? I'm going to do this in the order recommended in the Audi factory manual. If you don't know, you can download those for a small fee. It's quite useful. I do that quite often. So that recommends opening the bleed nipple, and it recommends front left, front right, rear left, rear right. So it says open the bleed nipple. That's an 11mm. I'm going to use the same line spanner that I used for the lines on the ABS unit. You'll notice I've got my highly sophisticated brake bleeding system set up here. So I'm going to open that, wait until no more bubbles come out. It recommends pressing the pedal at that point once no more bubbles are coming out to make sure that you've got everything. Now I am very wary of pressing the pedal too far down because I have ruined a master cylinder by doing that in the past. So if you're going to do that, press the pedal down a little, but not all the way, unless you want to have the pleasure of changing your master cylinder, which I definitely don't. Right, I bled the brakes, as I said I was going to, took it out for a test drive. Drove really well, but the brake pedal doesn't feel quite as good as it used to, quite as good as it should. I'm not quite happy with it. I felt it was safe, you know, the car was stopping in good time, but it just a little bit too spongy, but just not quite right, not quite as good as it was before. I'm going to do what, with hindsight, I probably should have done to start with, which is to use VCDS to bleed the pump. You can probably tell I've got the pressure bleeder set up behind me again. The car's jacked up, both wheels are off the ground. I'll just say at this point as well, that engine management light, that needed the code. It was the code in the engine computer for the lack of ABS signal. And whereas the others cleared themselves, that one needed deleting. So it was nothing more than that. Deleted it. We have no warning lights on the dash, which is great. Rather than me carrying the camera around and showing you all the different bits, what I'm probably going to do is leave one camera set up on one of the wheels so you can see more or less what I'm going to do. And then I'll put some screenshots in of each stage of the process that I go through. Okay, let's get started. The battery's been charging overnight. Select control module ABS brakes. Basic settings, brake system bleeding. It's not happy because I've taken the brake fluid level indicator off. Press and hold pedal. You can feel the pump running. Release pedal and open the front left and front right bleed screws. Front right. Straight away I could see some more air come out there, so that's a good sign. Right. Both open. Press next. Just adding some more pressure to the bleeder as the fluid goes through. Press pedal 10 times with the bleed screws closed. Okay. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Next, press pedal and hold. Just worried we're running a bit lower on fluid. This is doing a lot of cycles, a lot more than I had expected, if I'm honest. The reservoir is still nice and full. You can see how much fluid. Can you? Yes, you can. I think that's a 1.5 litre bottle, and it goes through. I didn't count them. I think it was 10. If it wasn't 10, it was there or thereabouts. 10 cycles of the ABS pump coming on, then waiting, then pressing the pedal with the bleeders closed, pressing and holding it down, and the pump activates with under pressure with the system closed, and then you activate it with the system open. So we've got through a good 2 litres of brake fluid there, probably more. What I'm going to do now is bleed the rear wheels again, just to see if any air has been dislodged from the pump and has ended up in the lines going to the rear wheels. It shouldn't have done, but it might have done. Much as I love brake bleeding, although I can't say it, I would rather not have to do it a third time. So let's get the front wheels back on and I'll bleed the back wheels, then I'll take it for another drive, then I'll tell you how I got on. All right, back from my second test drive. The car is properly fixed now. The brake pedal feels great. In fact, it feels better than it did before all this started. And that's not a surprise really, because it has had a substantial brake fluid change, hasn't it? All the warning lights have gone out. As I said, most of them went out of their own accord. The ESP and the steering warning lights don't go off straight away, but once you start driving they go off. The engine management light wasn't going to go off on its own, so I had to delete that code with VCDS to get that to go away. A learning point for me on the brake bleeding, I think I was a little bit optimistic to expect that I would get away without doing the ABS bleeding procedure, but as I say, the pedal felt pretty good, so I thought I'd give it a try, although as we now know that didn't work out quite that way, and we went through the VCDS ABS pump bleeding procedure, which took quite a long time and got through a lot of brake fluid, but I must say made a huge difference. Loads of air came out, so well worth doing. If you're doing this job, I would recommend you get yourself a 5-litre can of brake fluid from the outset, because you will need a good amount of it. I reckon I've probably got through between 2 and 3 litres, although I probably would have got through a bit less if I hadn't done that two-stage bleeding procedure as we saw. So I hope this video was helpful for you. I'm sure it applies to a whole range of other Audis as well as VW, Seat, Skoda as well. I think it's quite a common problem. Certainly the place that reconditioned that ABS unit for me seemed to have quite a lot of experience at dealing with it, which tells me that it happens quite often. Anyway, the car's completely fixed. Just to clarify, this has also fixed the speedometer not working, the odometer not working, and the fuel gauge bouncing around randomly all over the place, particularly when going round corners. So it's fixed the whole lot. Really satisfying job. So I hope this video was helpful for you. If you too have gone to your car, switched on the ignition and been greeted with a full set of warning lights on the dashboard, it's not that challenging to fix, takes a little bit of time, especially the brake bleeding procedure, but well worth doing and a satisfying repair. So, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you for the next one. Bye for now.